All right, today the topic is keep the quest in your questions. A human child will ask a mind-boggling amount of questions, and to the chagrin of his or her parents or grandparents, will refuse to take no for an answer. And that's why kids learn so fast. They mix insatiable curiosity with the quest for answers. Plus, they have a devoted support staff of parents, siblings, teachers, and grandparents to help them get what they want. You see, there's always a quest attached to the question of a child. On the converse, an ape can be taught sign language, and it can become adept at answering questions. But did you know that there has never been one instance, not one, of an ape ever asking his trainer a question? Even after 30 years of training, they've never asked one single question. Why? It might be something like this if they did. Hey, you in the white jacket with a clipboard and your fancy iPhone. After you bring me my supper, my evening repast, tell me a little about where you're going tonight. Okay. You got a date? You going shopping? I'm just asking. By the way, will you be back in the morning, or will that other white-jacketed hairless freak brother be here? Another thing, I'm an ape. You're basically hairless. So, hey, how about if I call you Harry? Is that ironic? Is that even a word? I'm just joking. Have a good night, or not. You may not want an ape to be asking you questions. But the major difference between animals and humans is simple. Animals don't ask questions. We do. We humans ask a lot of questions, which in turn have spread us around the world. After we ask a question, we usually go about trying to find an answer or find a way to get that question. See, the answer is our quest. Now, humans, they looked up at birds and they wondered what it would be like to fly. And so they quested until they developed powered flight. You know, we didn't wait until we adapted and grew our own set of wings. You know, we found a way to circumvent nature. That's quest. Man dreamed of breathing underwater. So instead of waiting for gills, he found a way. Even Leonardo da Vinci had an underwater breathing apparatus in the 1400s, Quest. We humans have developed the ability to prosper in any and every environment on Earth because we quested for answers to our questions. We keep the quest in our questions. So let's keep on asking. Let's seek and keep on seeking those open doors, and those doors will invariably swing open as we keep on knocking. So keep the quest in your questions. Now, the first question in the New Testament was posed by the wise men when they asked the evil King Herod about the location of the toddler Jesus. And the wise guys asked, "Where is he that is born King of the Jews?" See, those men demanded an answer from the king, and did they get their answer? Yes. Now, the first true question in the Old Testament was when God asked Adam, "Where are you?" See, if God was from Texas, he may have said, "Where are you at?" God wanted an answer from Adam, and he got one. A question should be followed with an answer or a quest. See, God is everywhere present and fills all time, so he knew the exact coordinates of where Adam and Eve were hiding when they hid from him in the garden. He was there. See, God just wanted Adam to think about where he was at mentally and spiritually. He wanted him to verbalize it. Adam had gotten lost in his own backyard, lost in the weeds. Sound familiar? See, the devil's first statement in the Bible was posed as a question, but it wasn't a true question at all. You see, it was more of a gloat, a selfish pre-victory lap. It was rhetorical. The ancient Athenians called it the figure of speech erotesis. We call it rhetorical question. And it was a definitive statement posed as a question to persuade, to provoke thought, to be funny, self-explanatory, or reflective. It was never asked to evoke an answer. Now, this will be important in a few minutes. And there's a few rhetorical questions that we hear every day. Now, they don't require answers. They are the question and the answer. Like, who knows? Or, are you crazy? Now, you're not expecting an answer to that. You know, how about this one? If all your friends jump off the bridge, would you jump off too? Your dad didn't want an answer. You see? How about this one? If God be for us, who can be against us? That's rhetorical. That's an answer in and of itself. Answer, if you want to answer it, is no one, right? You see, rhetorical questions are carefully crafted statements to prompt an individual or a crowd to ponder their deeply held opinions and beliefs. They get you thinking about what you're thinking about. And this will make more sense in a few minutes when we see the first real question that God asked to a human being. He wants an answer. When the devil posed his question, he didn't want an answer. Yet Eve still gave him one. See, the first question asked by a human in response to God asking Cain where Abel was rhetorical. You see, Cain had just killed his brother because he was jealous that God had accepted his little brother's sacrifice and not his. And God said, Cain, where's your little brother Abel? And Cain had been well schooled by the adversary by that time, and sarcastically said to God, in order to school God, am I my brother's keeper? See, that's sarcasm, but it's also a rhetorical question. It was like, duh. You see, he wasn't looking for an answer from God. He wanted to teach God a lesson. Now, this is not the first time somebody tried to teach God a lesson. Have you ever heard a lawyer say, never ask a question in court that you don't already know the answer to? You ever heard that? You see, a used car salesman say the same thing. Never ask a question to a buyer that you don't already know the answer to. You see, a rhetorical question doesn't seek an answer. The asker thinks he or she already knows. The speaker thinks the answer is in the question. Nothing to be learned here. The Greeks, the Athenians, did this to woo the audiences. It was entertainment. It was informative. It was manipulative. You see, but when we're closed off to learning, we've removed our quest from our question. And that's the whole topic today. Keep your quest in your questions. Now, the question and the still voice, still small voice. Now, most people on earth believe that they, at some point, have received some type of inspiration. Have you? Sure you have. You see, you had a thought, an aha moment, light bulbs, some type of inspiration. You heard a little voice in your head, or you just had a feeling. Maybe you heard a voice with your ears and no one was around. Christians call it the still small voice. And I believe that all of you have heard that still small voice at some point. And I believe that some of us even listened. You see, most of us have heard the story about the old prophet Elisha, who was running for his life from the soldiers of the evil queen Jezebel. And he ran, and he ran, and he ran, and he ran, until he ended up on the same mountain which Moses received the 10 Commandments upon. And then he hid himself in a cave. His retreat eventually led him back to his quest. But something happened. And in 1 Kings 19, we're going to read 11 through 13, and this will help explain this to you. And he, God, said, "Go forth and stand upon the mount before the Lord." And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind rent the mountains, and brake in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. You see, and after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. And it was so, when Elisha heard it, that he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood in the entering in of the cave. And behold, there came a voice unto him and said, "What doest thou here, Elijah? Where are you, man?" Same question. God knew where he was. You see, why am I bringing this still small voice thing up, you ask? What I'm about to share is something I just recently noticed, and it just blew my mind just a little bit. And it revolves around the first true question in the Bible. A true question always looks for or evokes an answer. Now, Adam and Eve had just blown it, and they gave in to the subtlety of the serpent, the deviousness of the devil, the attacks of the adversary. Now, some call it the original sin, but I'm not really sure. You see, for them to have been tricked so easily and so completely, they had to have already gone down that rabbit hole in thought and conversation. Or else, how would the enemy have known? You see, how else would the enemy know where to attack if he hadn't observed it somehow? Body language, thoughts, something tipped him off. Now, a side note, many Bible scholars have tried to boil down and expose the original sin. Some say it was hypothetical. Some say it was spiritual. Was it sexual? Was it edible? You see, I've noticed that in their lofty hypotheses, it usually reflects more about their own proclivities than it does Adam and Eve's. Think about that one for a minute. You see, maybe we too can learn something about our own selves in this section. The serpent, more accurately, the shiny one, had been waiting for the perfect time to appear. Now we know he can appear because he did appear to Jesus during the temptations, right? And the only two people that we know of that he appeared to was Jesus and Eve. You see, and he'd been watching and listening to Eve talking to Adam. And the serpent's question was in itself an answer, although misdirected to Adam and Eve's original quest. Genesis chapter 3, verse 1. Again, like I said, we're going to get to something here that I think is going to really bless you. Verse 1. And he said to the woman, "Yea, hath God said, ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden?" Well, the fallen one asked Eve in Genesis 3:1, translated well by Dr. Bullinger, who puts it like, can it be said that God has said? Or can it be that God has said? Can it be that God has said? Now, this is a rhetorical question. This is not a true question. You see, he's making a statement here. He's making a statement here. Now, remember that's rhetorical. The answer is assumed. It's like, duh. Duh. The answer is assumed. The Greeks did it to mesmerize their audiences or to fool themselves into thinking that their audiences got what they were saying. You see, in the Hebrew, the tone of this sentence is literally casual. Just look it up. It's casual, it's comfortable, it's non-confrontational. This is not like him pointing his finger at Eve. Do you think God? It wasn't like that. It's like, oh, by the way, you know, it's non-confrontational, but in effect it was soul-splitting. It was soul-splitting, and it was world-changing. That's rhetoric. That's rhetorical. You see, she was not expected to answer, yet she did, and the tempter played along. Now, didn't Lucifer try this same tactic with God way back when? You'll see what I'm talking about. Something like, so you really sure you know what God wants you to do with your life, huh? You really think you can distinguish God's voice from all that noise around you? You really think that you listen to God? Do you really think that God cares for your every need? Do you even realize your full potential? Do you realize that you can be just like God? So those are rhetorical questions. He's not asking her to answer, you see, but that's the gist of this if you read that whole section. The fall's really, we'll get to in just a minute, that man stopped wanting to listen to the still small voice. And I'll explain that in a second. We'll jump to verse 5. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods. The one true God is what that's saying. You're going to be Elohim. You see, knowing. And that word knowing is teaching or declaring good and evil. You're going to be the authority. Wasn't that the lead into the fall of Lucifer? That same line of thinking is what ruined him. I will be like the Most High. I will be like God. I will own the universe. My name's going to be in lights. I'm going to be famous. I'm going to be the most famous one that there is. Isaiah 14:14. So now, we're going to read that now. Isaiah 14:12 through 14. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend unto heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Sounds very dramatic, but isn't it quite human to want to be famous? Yeah, to be remembered, to have your name in lights. That's why people give money to hospitals. That's why they have headstones. They want to be remembered. That's why they have memorial services, right? It's all to be remembered. We all want that stuff. You see, my wife and I were sitting down to dinner with two attorneys in Cleveland's Little Italy district. And an older man in a nice suit walked in the door, and everyone in the place stood up. You know, even our table guests stood up. And I didn't know who this guy was. But when they sat back down, they noticed my wife and my puzzled faces and said, he's the head of Cleveland's mafia. See, that man worked hard and long to get to the place people showed him that level of respect. When officers of the law, lawyers, are standing up for a mafia guy. Now back to keeping our questions. You see, a true question should inspire you to do something, change something, go somewhere. And here's where I'm going to tell you about that thing that blew me away. And this may answer a question or two that you might have had about this section. We'll go to verse 7. And the eyes of them both, this is Genesis 3:7, and the eyes of them both were opened. And they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. Now, the two words we want to look at here, first off is the word naked, and that's from the same word in verse 1 that calls the serpent subtle. So the word subtle in verse 1 is the same word as naked here. So there's some connection there. And it means bare, smooth, cunning, or crafty. That's what that word means. They just happen to translate it naked. Okay? And makes me wonder what Adam and Eve considered naked. Now, was it deeper than the flesh? Was their nakedness, was their exposure deeper than the flesh? Was it exposure to the light or to the darkness that they now saw in themselves? How did they picture themselves now? Who were they listening to now? Where was their head now? Where are you at, Adam? Adam, where are you at? You see, the next word is aprons I want you to look at. Now, we're not quite to this part that I really want to get to. This is a lead up, okay? Now, the word aprons means covering of some sort. If you look it up, it means a belt or a full suit of armor. Now, they fashioned themselves aprons out of fig leaves to hide themselves. All artists ever show is a leaf bikini and a plant-based jockstrap. Think about it. Is that much of a hide? Ooh, I'm hiding. You see, it's not like that. Ooh, don't look, Eve. You see, don't look now. Look now. No. You know, you see, I wonder if the apron, the covering, was actually a full body covering like a ghillie suit. Remember, they were trying to hide from God. You see, a ghillie suit is an article of clothing that completely covers a person with what looks like the trees or plants around them. Hunters and snipers wear them at times. It's just a thought. I really don't know. That word apron could mean a belt or it can mean a full body covering. But if you tried to hide from God in a manicured garden that you've been working for a while, how would you hide? You see, if they really wanted to hide, they would not put on a fig leaf negligee. That probably would have attracted even more attention. Why do you think women wear them? Oh, I wonder what's under that thing. You see? I mean, verse 8. And they heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. Now here we go. I just saw this yesterday morning. They heard the voice of God walking in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of God amongst the trees of the garden. What kind of trees are probably in that garden? Fig. You see? And here's what blew me away. Now, we all know that voices don't walk, right? And we know that God inhabits the universe, correct? Yes. He'd be a little big to take a walk with you, folks. You see, I know it's a nice thought to think of walking shoulder and shoulder or hand in hand with the Father. I'm just walking with the Father. You see, talking your fool head off, footsteps in the sand, mind picture. You see, it's all good. It's great for little pictures on your desk and to give, your Sunday school teacher. You see? But the words voice and walking are poor translations. The word voice means sound. And the word walking means movement or spreading. Put them together and you get the sound of God moving towards you. Isn't that the still small voice of Elisha? When did you stop listening to the still small voice, Adam? When did you stop listening to that still small voice, Eve? Do you still hear my still small voice? Of course, I don't have one. I know you hear me by the way, that I know you hear me, but why did you stop responding? Is basically, he goes, I'm here. You know I'm here. You hear, you know it's all around you, but you're not listening anymore. You ever had God tell you something and you didn't do it, and you got in that accident or something weird happened? That's what Adam and Eve did. They'd listened for all their life until that point. However long that was, a year, 10 years, 100 years, I don't know. We don't know. But that's all they knew. They had total trust in God. You see, what is stopping you from returning my call? You ever get pissed when somebody doesn't return your text? Or doesn't respond to your post on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever? Or when you call somebody and leave a voicemail and they don't get back with you? And it's somebody you need an answer from? God needed an answer. Where you at, Adam? I'm right here. You hear me, but you don't hear me. You feel me, but you don't feel me anymore. What happened? And God called unto Adam and said unto him, where art thou? Where you at? And he said, I heard thy voice in the garden. So did he hear something? He heard the sound of God in that garden. And I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself. Do you hide yourself with one leaf? Just think about this stuff. It's crazy. Adam finally picked up the phone. Adam finally responded at this point. He finally acted on the words of God, that still, small voice. Adam was afraid to show himself, like a child who's lying usually won't look you in the eyes. You ever seen that? You're moving your head, trying to get them to look at you. You're grabbing their head and you're going, you look at me, boy. You can tell it never happened to me. Usually followed by a leather belt, You see, he finally acted on the words of God. He finally acted on that still small voice. Adam was afraid to show himself. He thinks you can see, like that child thinks you can see the lie in him. People say like a liar, their eyes are shifty. Well, a lot of times people, unless they're a great liar, they can't look you straight in the eye. Adam wasn't a trained liar. He'd never done it before. You're not very good. Remember the rule of the 10,000? That means the old devils did a lot of lies. You see, remember Jonah tried to hide from God? Remember? And he took that ship to Nineveh and he ended up in the soup, swallowed by a whale, killed. You see? Now we're going to get to that $1 million question. Where are you, Adam? Now that's the question. Remember, keep the question your question. Now this is not a rhetorical question. It could be. But this is the first true question in the Bible. And it's one that we ask ourselves, why was I born? What am I doing here? Why am I alive? Why did I make it through that war? Why did I make it through that conflict, that battle? How did I escape getting killed in that building? How come I didn't go down with the towers? How did I avoid that accident? Why me? You see, where are you, Adam? Now, not physically, but in your heart. And I want you to tell me. Now, there's something about talking that synthesizes what somebody knows. In fact, it is said that if you can't teach what you know, then you don't know it. If you can't teach someone else, then you do not know it. I recently had somebody who passed a very difficult test, and she told me that when she studies, she talks to herself out loud, and she says it out loud until she thinks she could teach it to someone else. And that's classical learning. The Greeks really did that stuff. You see, where are you in your heart? Are you still with me, Adam? You ever had a boss tell you that? You with me still? Or a teammate? You still on this team? You know? And, or you might have heard, maybe it didn't happen to you, but maybe you heard a coach say that or another teammate say that. You still with us, man? Get your head in the what? Get your head in the game. That's basically what God's saying here. Where you at? Get your head back in the game, Adam. Because it ain't going to get any easier now. What's about to happen? You see, where are you? Adam's got to act now. You see, it reinserted, God is trying to reinsert the quest back in his original question to Adam. You see, do you want to still hear that still small voice, or do you have something better? Now, most people in the world really think they have something better, though they do listen. Even some of the most evil people listen, because God is everywhere. He's in everybody's woods. He's in everybody's garden. He's always trying to give. He gives to the just and the unjust, does he not? Right. Okay? He's always there. He's always moving and grooving and trying to help. Adam and Eve knew this. But the adversary wanted them to think that they were like God, or really that they were God. Because he did. That's the trick, folks. I don't believe in God. I know where you're at. I don't have to ask you where you're at. I know where you're at. You're trying to hide under a fig leaf. You're in a ghillie suit. You see? And so after a little blame and shame shifting, God forgave Adam and Eve, and they got busy populating the earth with people who wanted to walk with body, soul, and listen to the still small voice of the Spirit. And the Spirit of God just gives us an advantage, folks. God can talk to just about anybody, you see, but the Spirit of God, it gives us a great advantage, and that's what he wanted Adam and Eve to have. See, this was Adam's quest the rest of his life. Now finally, active asking. Active asking. In closing, I want to teach you a lesson that Jesus taught his disciples when they asked him to teach them how to pray, like his cousin John the Baptist taught his disciples how to pray. Now imagine Jesus, the perfect guy, right? Best teacher ever. And the disciple comes up, hey Jesus, man, you're cool, man. We're digging you. We're grooving. We're moving. We're right with you, man. We're simpatico. We're there, man. Hey, but could you teach us to pray like your cousin John the Baptist teaches his disciples? Now, why did they ask that? Because John's style of prayer and the way he taught his disciples to pray, followed up the prayers with the vivid 3D, super, ultra, high-def, big screen, noticeable results. When John's guys prayed, boom, stuff happened. And Jesus' disciples knew this, and they weren't there yet. So Jesus goes, okay, I'll teach you. I might have taught him a thing or two, over time. Came from the same stock. He's a cool dude. I love the guy. And so Luke chapter 12, you don't turn there yet because we're not going to be there, but it tells us that God already knows what we need, right? God already knows what you need before you ask. So why does God have us ask? What is the point of prayer if God already knows what you need? You should be able to just whisper through life, right? And everything's going to be laid right at your feet. It's because humans need the quest. It's what makes us human. Or else you'd just be counting your fingers and picking fleas off of each other. You see? I mean, it's the quest and the question that spread early man around the whole globe. Why? What's over that hill? Me don't know. Let's go. I'm not going that way. You know? That way get me wet. I build boat. You know? I mean, so, you know, I mean, it's crazy. You see? But I mean, the curiosity of mankind. Animals are curious, but it's just curious to a point. But we're curious to action. A ball rolls past a cat or a dog, it's going to chase it. And it's going to bring it back. You see? When God sent a ball around the world, humans chased and didn't come back. It's not a boomerang. You see? I mean, God already knows what we need. So why do we ask? Because God asks us to ask. That's the growth factor. You see? Focus comes from asking. All asking is setting a goal, right? But just setting goals, has that gotten anybody anything? Setting a goal? What do you need to go along with that goal? You got to have action. Got to have commitment. You see, it's always the precursor to any human achievement, or should I say action. Asking and action is always a precursor to any human achievement. It all starts with the ask. You see, in business we call this process goal setting, or putting enough energy into your action to reach those goals. 10x, you know, or whatever book you just read. You see, you know, every successful person does this, everyone. They ask, they set a goal, and then they head for it. That's all it is. God wants us to ask because it gets us to verbalize a goal. I want healing. I want money. I want a relationship. You see, a better relationship. I want something. To ask means you want something you don't have, right? Asking followed by action are the ancestors of abundance. Asking followed by action are the ancestors of abundance. We humans are wired to ask and act in order to receive. We're also designed to listen and care for each other along the way because we're a social species. We need each other. I want to help you reach your goals, and I really do. And I know you try to help me reach mine. You see, that's how we're wired. Prayer is nothing more than active asking. You see, Luke chapter 11, and this is where we're going to end here. And in verse 1, I'm going to read it from the Voice. The Voice. Another time Jesus was praying. I should sing this, right? No. And when he finished, one of his disciples approached him. Disciple, teacher, would you teach us your way of prayer? John taught his disciples his way of prayer, and we're hoping you'll do the same. Now, John must have been amazing. You see, Jesus then goes into 3 mindsets of asking. And these are all questions. First, he lays out what and who in the Lord's Prayer. This is who you ask. This is what you ask. You see, second, he tells them how to pray. And he verbally illustrates aggressiveness and persistence that we have to have, that never give up, never go home empty-handed attitude that we're going to cover in a minute or so. And third, he reminds us of what to expect when he clearly lays out that God will never give us a bad gift, but will lavish upon us loving and powerful gifts if we actively ask. Now these are the three basic points that John must have taught his disciples, that Jesus was now going to teach his. So for time's sake, we're going to skip to the second example Jesus used in order to teach his disciples the aggressive, never take no attitude of prayer. Prayer is not passive, folks. Stop praying to the God of finance because you're broke. Get a freaking job. You see, or get a better job, or get more sales. Do something. My God, there's no financial fairy out there. You see, there's no health fairy. Oh, please heal me, God, heal me. Well, do something. Maybe you should do something your whole life so you can stay healthy. That helps too, right? Sometimes we get stuck, we get hit, something happens. I get it. I'm not saying that you're wrong, and we all get sick sometimes. Okay, so please don't be mad at me now, like some of you are, you see. See, prayer is not passive. Asking is not designed to be passive. It's the first step to action. So imagine that one of your friends comes over at midnight. Now here we are, verse 5. One of your friends comes over at midnight, and he bangs on the door and shouts, "Friend, will you lend me 3 loaves of bread? A friend of mine just showed up unexpectedly from a journey, and I don't have anything to feed him." Now, would you shout out from your bed, "Hey, I'm already in bed, and so are the kids. I already locked the door. I can't be bothered"? Well, you know this as well as I do. Even if you don't care that this fellow is your friend, if he keeps knocking long enough, you'll get up and give him whatever he needs simply because of his brash persistence. I love the term brash persistence. That's prayer. You don't see people pray like that. Not much. He's teaching people how to talk to God. This is how to pray. Now, churches might become untenable or unattendable if everybody did this, but in your own life or with your best bud, this is how you pray. It's just you keep going and you go for it 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 and you go for it. You see, Jesus calls it, or the King James calls it importunity, which means overly persistent asking. You ask and you ask and you ask again and again and again and again and again and again. You never stop because you never lose sight of your goal. Your GPS keeps recalculating when you get off course, doesn't it? That's what prayer is. You recalculate. You ever changed a goal? You really wanted this, and then a couple of years later, I don't really want that anymore. Now I want this. I want a 70-inch screen, not a 60-inch, or whatever it is. You see, I don't want 60,000. I want 160,000. Why not? God really doesn't care. It's not any harder for him to get you 160,000 than it is 60,000 or 6,000. It's just all up here. Where you at? Where you at? You see, importunity. Hey, buddy, go away. Hey, I need some bread. Go away. Hey, buddy, I need some bread. Really, get out of here. Come on, man, my kids are asleep. Come on, buddy. I told you I need some bread. I ain't leaving until I get me some bread. I smelled your wife cooking it earlier today. I know you got you some bread, and I want me some bread so I can feed my friend. Get out of here. All right, holy moly. And he gets up and what? Gives him bread. You see? He knows that if he persists long enough, his buddy's going to eventually get up and give him some bread. That's how you pray. That's how you ask. That's what you do when you go after something that you really want. Put the energy behind your asking. That's keeping the quest in your questions. You ever think about what a quest is? A quest is like a journey. It's a grand journey. I'm going to quest. I'm going on my Italian quest I'm going on my, quest to California or to New Jersey or whatever cool place you want to be. Milwaukee, Pennsylvania, Utah, You see, you're going on your quest. See, but that's how you pray. That's how you ask. That's what you go after. That's what you do. See, in that culture, the houses were smaller. They weren't insulated. They had no glass on their windows. People could easily hear everything that's happening outside on the inside. Everybody slept in the same room. Families all slept in the same sort of a huddle, all near each other, unless it was really hot, probably. Come on, get away from me. You ever sleep with a child, It's like they're like 400 degrees. It's like, how the heck does that happen? And then some wives don't have any temperature at all. They're like 40 below. How does that happen? I don't know. We're all humans, but it happens. You see, but they're all sleeping there on the floor, and then somebody starts yelling on that window, "Hey, buddy, need some bread." Shut the hell up. Shut up. And he just keeps doing it. You're going to get up because you don't want the whole family waking up. You just got the baby down. You don't want to walk around the block. You don't have to get back in the car and drive the kid around till they go back to sleep. So you got to get up and work tomorrow. See, the reason that friend screamed out with brash persistence and didn't ask for just one, he didn't ask for two, but he asked for 3 loaves. It's because it was the culture at that time. And it was really a beautiful culture. You see, a loaf was not a huge loaf of bread like you get in Italy, in little Italian village somewhere. You see, it isn't that kind of bread. It isn't like going to Panera, and getting a little loaf with your salad, you see. It was just a flat bread about as thick as a human hand, about as big as a plate, you see. And a woman or a child would probably eat one. Just one of those at a meal. And they use that. They tear it off and they would dip it in a common dipping dish. Like we might have hummus or salsa or something like that. And then you'd eat it. Or guacamole, you see. Or they'd pick up a piece of meat with that. And that's how they would eat. Well, a woman and a child would eat one. A working guy, a guy who works really hard like some of you do, you see, they would eat 2. Working guy, it's like, where do you put that? You're burning it off. You see, but you'd always give a guest 3. You'd give a traveler 3. Why? It's just the culture. Always give people more than they need. And it's cool that he's using an example of this, of asking for 3. Always ask God for more than you need. Always ask for abundance. You might just get it. See, what a lesson. What a lesson. You see, you locate abundance. You ask for abundance. You expect abundance. And then you go for that abundance, and you're going to enjoy that abundance. Verse 9. So listen. Now, Jesus is still teaching this lesson that he learned from his cousin John. So listen. Keep on asking and you will receive. Keep on seeking and you will find. Keep on knocking and the door will be open for you. All who keep asking will receive. All who keep seeking will find. And doors will open to those who keep knocking. See, the time is now to continue that adventure you started when you were a child. Does a child take no for an answer? It takes a long time to beat enough no's into them where they'll listen. Right? You see? And it basically ruins this in many ways. I mean, scientists, they don't take no for an answer. They go, no, there's got to be a way. There has to be a cure for cancer of this sort. And they keep finding them, right? There has to be a cure. There's going to be a cure for so many things that are incurable right now. There will be a cure for ALS and Parkinson's. I just had a client come in the other day whose wife has had Parkinson's for 18 years. 18, he's a young man. He's young. He's younger than me. Of course, I'm not young, even if I look young. Don't be fooled by the white hair. I'm a redhead on the inside. You see, the time is now to continue. The time is now to dust off the truth that's buried just under the surface of you. Be like that child. Be on that quest. The one thing, my mom wouldn't let me do anything when I was a kid. Pretty much. If I say, can I go to? Nope. Can I go to the store? Nope. Can I go to the PX? Nope. Can I go to the BX? Nope. Can I go to the movie theater? Nope. Can I go see Tommy? No. Can I go see Billy? No. Can I go for a walk? No. Then I learned one word. Can I go on an adventure? Yep. And that was the magic word. And my mom wanted me to adventure. She wanted me to have a quest. She didn't just want me to do stuff. She wanted me to quest. And I still quest. I still look for adventure. I still want it. I still look for it. I watch for it. I want abundance. I want more than a... Can you believe there's a verse that says that? That we can have exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think? Isn't that the same thing that Jesus just said right there? Don't just ask for one. Don't just ask for two. Ask for three. Ask for more than you'll ever need. More than you could eat. More health than you could even enjoy. Then you can give a little bit of health to somebody else. Hey man, I'm pretty healthy. Here's some for you. You're welcome. You see? And so, dust it off. The big question is whether you're going to be able to say a hearty yes to your adventure. Joseph Campbell. Can you say a hearty yes to your adventure? You see, ask, seek, and keep on knocking until you get your prize or you reach your destination. Open the doors to your abundance, to your health, to your growth as a human being by being brashly persistent in your asking. Once again, why do people ask questions? Asking questions is very natural and an exclusively human phenomenon. No other animal on earth has ever asked a question, except for a parrot. You see, asking is what separates us from every other creature that is also cared for by God. See, persistent asking followed by relentless action dominates instinct. That's why we don't have it, folks, because you ask and you can act, because you have a quest. We don't have instinct, folks. We can ask, we act. We're designed to dominate. Do you feel it? Can you see it? Have you asked for that domination of what you need? Do you still hear the still small voice of God? Do you still hear the still small voice of God? Do you? Asking is the precursor to all human abundance, but our quest takes us there. God is a faithful listener and a dependable supplier of all our need. The first thing He requires us humans to do is to ask. So ask until you act. Act until you get. And then just keep going until you dominate. You want to hear the still small voice of God? Then always follow your questions with a brashly persistent quest. Keep the quest in your questions. God bless.